Don't talk badly about the death, right? They say that all the time. However, and this particular senator really kind of hits at home for me because I don't know. I didn't tell you this story. I didn't add this or incorporate this into the keynote today in this story. But one of the close races I followed as a progressive when we first started the Combo Couch was the race for her seat, and it was like there were like three progressives. I can't remember her name, Allison something, who used to work with TYT. She was on the show. Jimmy interviewed her. David Hildebrand, who was another progressive activist, he ran for the seat. The guy I supported, Pat Harris, awesome. He ran for the seat, and they all ran against the one insider who was kind of like Democratic establishment friendly, was Kevin De Leon, who a lot of LA Democrats will know. They'll understand who he is. He once got a city council seat. He's been under pressure. They've been some of the progressives have been saying that he's been pushing racial tropes and whatnot, and they had an incident where they almost got into a fight. It was kind of crazy, but they were all running for her seat, and then she eventually won that seat anyway, and everybody went away. But I followed it closely, and when De Leon won the primary, and it's even funny because the Republican who finished third in the jungle primary that year, he was in second, and De Leon passed him. His name is James Bradley. I'm friends with him now. We got to meet at some of the out in the field when I was covering some of the Trump events, the Save the Children events and whatnot. I met James Bradley out there, who eventually ran for Ted Lieu's seat too as well. So it was very interesting. This race and this seat in particular always meant a lot to me because of this woman, because this evil woman. And I don't want to talk badly about the dead, and I even just made a tweet right now because there's the question of who is Gavin Newsom going to use to replace her, right? Gavin Newsom said he's going to pick a woman of color. Nancy Pelosi clearly wants Dianne Feinstein to continue to hold her seat so that she can then promote Adam Schiff, because she's an Adam Schiff for brains person, and get Adam Schiff in the Senate. She didn't want Barbara Lee getting to the Senate, and that was the fear, that Gavin Newsom would appoint Barbara Lee. But now you even hear Republicans talking about, well, maybe he'll use Kamala Harris to replace, listen to this, Dianne Feinstein. This is the Republican talking point, right? Some of the populists, right? People like Patrick Burns, my friend James Bradley, right? Kamala Harris will be used to replace Dianne Feinstein in the Senate. Gavin Newsom will then slip into the VP seat. And then when Joe Biden feels the heat from this Hunter Biden indictment situation, whatnot, he'll exit stage left. And there you go. You got pretty hair, not pretty hair pasta, but pretty hair Gavin Newsom as your presidential candidate nominee, or takes the White House altogether. That's the talk right now about what's going on.
Well, then our country will look like San Francisco / California.
I know, right?
That's great.
Completely just like two classes, the ultra rich in San Francisco and the ultra poor, everybody living on the streets. It's just nuts. This is Afshin Rattanzi, and he's talking about centrist stalwart of the Senate and dies at 90, our friend Dianne Feinstein, neo-Nazi supporting U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein, who supported arming Ukraine's Azov battalion, as well as the invasion of Iraq that killed, wounded, or displaced tens of millions of men, women, and children, has died at age 90. That's the thing that really bothered me about Dianne Feinstein, because when Kevin De Leon won that primary, finished second to her, I was saying maybe we should take a look at Kevin De Leon. I'm now criticized from one particular friend. He won't stop. He will let it down. But I was looking for anybody at that time that's going to be anti-war. Knowing what she stood for and how she pushed the Iraq war along with Joe Biden in the Senate, I wanted anybody than her, because she was considered that, once again, that hardcore establishment, Democrat. Her husband, made millions and millions of dollars, through insider trading that she helped with and whatnot. So this particular senator, I wanted to go away for quite some time. Not so much in this fashion, right? I was hoping for Kissinger with the Grim Reaper crane that grabs the people, but we got Dianne Feinstein because she was a warmonger more than anything. And you'll see videos out there, Misha, of her kind of belittling some children who went to talk to her about climate change. They went to her office and she kind of just talked down to them. You'll see that out there. But her war stance, to me, was really bad. This is from Corn Pop. R.I.P. Dianne Feinstein. Now, the first one on the list is my other major concern, and I'm going to get into that because I think that whoever is used to replace Dianne Feinstein is going to be just like her when it comes to being an architect of mass surveillance. If Adam Schiff for brains gets that seat, and I think that he's the front runner right now. Katie Porter's running for that seat. Adam Schiff's running for that seat. Barbara Lee's running for that seat. And who else knows? But I think they're going to try to get Adam Schiff there. This is one of the most concerning things, that number one on the list. She's the architect of mass surveillance. She's the architect of whistleblower persecution. She's the architect of the Iraq war. Her and Joe Biden in the Senate pushing the war. She is warmonger AF. Architect of internet censorship. That kind of goes hand in hand with that mass surveillance, right? Big tech looking in, demonetizing. If you ever heard of Vault 7, look up Vault 7. Have you heard of Vault 7? Right. Vault 7 is one of these things. There was a whistleblower. Somebody dropped all this information. And I forgot his name. It wasn't Ross Ulbricht. Man, I forgot his name. Ross Ulbricht's the guy who I think was selling stuff on, they said on the dark web. I can't remember the name of his site. I know the audience is probably screaming right now. But once again, Vault 7 was this inside to what the tools the CIA's had, the way they can censor you and look and spy on you, right? While you have all these machines, anything that has a microphone or a camera, even if it's turned off, they can be looking at you. So she's right there, a sock puppet for the establishment until the very end. There is no rest for the wicked. Dianne Feinstein is no longer with us. Here's some of the other things she did, right? Remember when Dianne Feinstein flew the Confederate flag in front of the San Francisco City Hall to pander to the Dixiecrats visiting the D.C. in the hopes of getting the VP ticket? And then a black activist dressed as a Union soldier hiked 50 feet up the pole and tore it down? That was awesome. That was it. But that was her, She was kind of pandering to those Dixiecrats because she wanted to get the VP ticket. Now, this is the big one right here. This is from Politico. Dianne Feinstein, NSA protecting America. I haven't had the opportunity to do due diligence, said Feinstein, because she was all about mass surveillance. When there was collecting of major data from the NSA, she stood behind it. And that's who she is. And that's what we have to push out against. That's why if Adam Schiff gets this seat, forget about it, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to have the same Adam Schiff for brains, who's a warmonger himself. When it came to Libya, Adam Schiff was on Hillary Clinton's butt that she didn't bomb quick enough. That's how Adam Schiff was. There's an old interview with Al Jazeera. See if you can go find it. Adam Schiff was yelling the fact that they were dragging their feet and not bombing Libya quick enough. He's always been a warmonger. The top two leaders of the Senate's Intelligence Committee said today that the widespread monitoring of phone records revealed by Wednesday's Guardian report has been going on for years and that Congress is regularly briefed about it. So they knew about it. There was a leak coming out and saying, there's been monitoring of phone records and what's going on. And they knew about it. They didn't care. In fact, they okayed it. They condoned it. Senator Dianne Feinstein and Saxby Chambliss also defended the National Security Agency's, the NSA's, request to Verizon for all metadata about phone calls made within the U.S. and from the U.S. to other countries. That's who Dianne Feinstein is. That's why I was so desperate for anybody to replace this woman at one time. She's a warmonger. She's a Nazi lover. She's an authoritarian. She doesn't give a shit about your civil liberties. And that's why I wanted her gone for so long. Am I happy she's dead? I'm never happy anybody's dead. Because who's going to replace her? If it's Adam Schiff, are we going anywhere? No. It's going to be interesting. I would like to see, I don't know if there's any progressives in the race. Do you want to see if there's anybody who's come up for the Senate seat race in California? Mm-hmm. See, I know Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, and Barbara Lee are all getting ready. But we'll see who else is in that race. They said the information gathered by intelligence on the phone communications is metadata used to connect lines to terrorists and that it did not contain the content of the phone calls or messages. This is from Politico. As far as I know, this is the exact 3-month renewal of what has been in place for the past 7 years, Feinstein said. This renewal is carried out by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court under the Business Records section of the Patriot Act. Therefore, it is all lawful. It has been briefed to Congress. So there it is. She doesn't care. She's never been a protector of civil liberties. In fact, she's infringed on them, right? She's always pushed back against them. So that's who Dianne Feinstein is. And now we have to wonder who's going to take her place. This is for Petty is Praxis. My favorite thing about Dianne Feinstein is how she gave carte blanche to intelligence agencies to violate our civil rights when she was leading the Senate Intelligence Committee, then clutched her pearls when she found out the CIA was spying on the committee too. Oh, Dianne. Now listen, I don't care. I don't know how you feel about Scott Ritter, and I don't care in this at this particular point, because we talked about what she did in Iraq. They wouldn't have been able to go to Iraq if there weren't senators like Joe Biden at the time and Dianne Feinstein. And they knew. They were told about what the weapons or lack of weapons or weapons of mass destruction, because that was the whole thing. Remember Colin Powell, went to the UN, gave this whole speech on how Saddam Hussein has all these weapons of mass destruction and that we got to take them out. I can't remember the line. We don't want that smoking gun to turn into a smoking mushroom cloud was their big thing. The fear they were, thrusting upon the public. This was shortly after 9/11. We'd already gone into Afghanistan, but the whole country was very, very on edge. In fact, George Bush got a lot of support at the time to go into Afghanistan. And, had very few people pushing back against him. Gerald Celente, who's been on the show before, who I just talked to the other day. Gerald Celente had a column. It was on all the channels. He had a column in the USA Today, I believe. It was on a bunch of channels. Pretty much when he said, if we go into Afghanistan, we'll lose. He was cut off. He was blackballed. He was thrusted out and just made to go away. Well, when it came to Iraq, there wasn't a lot of people pushing back, despite the fact that a lot of people didn't know and didn't understand. They didn't understand the difference between a Sunni and a Shiite, but they didn't realize that there was no way Osama bin Laden would be working with Saddam Hussein. But the mainstream media sold that. The Senate sold that. The Bush administration sold that. Dick Cheney and his goons sold that. So one person really truly tried to push back against that, and that is Scott Ritter. So despite anything, I want to read to you what was said from between Scott Ritter and Dianne Feinstein. I met Senator Feinstein once in the lead up to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. She had just recently been assigned to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence in 2001. And it was in that capacity that she had a senior staffer from the committee ask me to come to Washington, D.C. to brief her on Iraqi WMD and the allegations being made by the Bush administration that Iraq continue to possess them. We met in a secure conference room in the Capitol building, me, the senator, and half a dozen staffers and aides. It was a polite professional affair with the senator asking questions and taking notes. Eventually, she confronted me. Your position is causing us some difficulty. You are making the U.S. look bad in the eyes of the world by telling the truth. I replied that my analysis and underlying facts were rock solid, something she agreed with. I said that while I knew she couldn't reveal sensitive intelligence, if she could look me in the eye and say she has seen unequivocal proof that Iraq retained WMDs, I'd shut up and go away. She looked at her retinue, right? And then me. I have seen no such intelligence, she replied. She thanked me for briefing and said it provided her with food for thought. In October 11, 2002, Senator Feinstein voted in favor of the resolution authorizing the war with Iraq. Later, she said she had been misled by the Bush administration and bad intelligence. I will forever know Senator Feinstein as someone who had been empowered by the truth and lacked the moral courage to act on it. The blood of thousands of Americans and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis stains her soul. I hope when she stands in judgment before her maker, she is punished accordingly. And that's from Scott Ritter, who was the chief UN inspector for the WMD program in Iraq, who stood up and said, no, no, no. He had warned people. He had told people. He was screaming about it left and right. And if you paid attention back then, just even remotely, and, at that time, I wasn't involved in politics as much as I am now today. But listening to Scott Ritter back at that time, I'm like, why isn't anybody listening to this guy? This guy's the one who's in charge of going in there and seeing if they have weapons of mass destruction. They don't have them. And then all of a sudden you do a little research and you got to understand that, oh, they did at one time have weapons of mass destruction. We gave it to them. But guess what? The ones that we gave them had a shelf life that had been expired for quite some time. So we understood for fact that they didn't really have weapons of mass destruction. And when they went in there and set the whole country on fire, where there's maybe 1 million dead or more, if not millions misplaced, right? You're talking about Iraqi Christians in the north that were almost wiped out, and Saddam protected them at one time, all gone. Well, you understood that they never had these weapons of mass destruction, that it was all just a lie. And it's because Dick Cheney and his goons, and Dick Cheney ran that White House. He ran the foreign policy in that White House. That was not George Bush, and that was not Karl Rove. That was Scooter Libby going along with Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, and they set the Middle East on fire. That's why General Wesley Clark goes, I can't believe it. They gave me a memo that says not after when we go into Afghanistan, Iraq, we're going to go into Syria, Libya, the whole 9 yards. They knew. They had their plan together. So they had to make things up. They had to change the law on so many things. Remember, it was no longer prisoner of war. It was enemy combatant, right? Remember, let's use Guantanamo Bay. So therefore, we can torture these guys and they're not on American soil, so they don't have rights. They did so many things. What was it called? Intense interrogation techniques or whatever it was. So they didn't call it torture, but they were taking Iraqi citizens and locking them in boxes or waterboarding them and torturing them. We've all seen the pictures. Abu Ghraib ass is what they called it, because what they did to these people, it was terrible. And Dianne Feinstein was confronted by Scott Ritter with facts. If she wanted to, she could have taken that truth and gone with it. But she felt the pressure. And then what did she do? Later on, I was misled by bad intelligence. No, you were given the proper intelligence, Dianne Feinstein. And that's why when you go meet your maker, who knows what's going to happen. Dianne Feinstein, dead at 90. Anybody who thinks Dianne Feinstein needs to step down due to her death is really showing misogyny. Doubt you would say similar if a male senator died in office. Nobody wants to work. Dianne Feinstein, right? So that's it, guys. That's it for Dianne Feinstein. She is dead at 90. Who's going to replace her? Go to my Twitter, @YoPasta. I put down the 3 choices right now. Did we find out if...
There's a list. I'm not seeing anybody that I know to be progressive on that list.
Yeah, how many people are on that list?
A good amount. I mean, there's...
You want to start reading some of those names?
Sure.
Go ahead, let's
here. Of course, it's freezing. Paul Anderson, Dana Bobbitt, James P. Bradley, Eric Early,
James Bradley,
Fabricant,
mm-hmm.
Jacob Farmos, Jeremy Fennell, Frank Ferreira, Carlson Franklin Jr., Denise Gary Pandel, Jehu Hand, Zafar Inam, Febrina, very difficult name. The rest of it was Zakaria Kortum, Roxanne Lawler, Barbara Lee, Peter Yuan Lee, Barack Obama Mandela.
I have no idea. Good.
That's a fun one.
Oh.
Romel Montenegro, John Papelheim, Douglas Howard Pierce, Katie Porter, Harry Pound, Raji Robb, Lexi Reese, Jonathan
my friend
Reese.
Raji Robb. Yeah, Raji Robb is running for that. Yeah.
Okay. That's
so we got a bunch of people. Raji Robb is in that. James Bradley's a friend of mine. He's in that.
And Adam Schiff, of course.
Adam Schiff. Is Katie Porter on that list?
Katie Porter's on the list.
Katie Porter's on the list. So it's going to be interesting, guys. Go to my Twitter, @YoPasta, and let me know who you think's going to run. I put down the 3 Democratic powerhouses, right? Because that's more than likely who Gavin Newsom's going to use to replace. And here's the thing. If, in fact, they get in, let's say Gavin Newsom makes a move and puts in Barbara Lee right now, right? It's going to be very hard to beat her as the incumbent, right? And that's why I think that, Nancy Pelosi kept on wheeling Dianne Feinstein out there, because she wanted Dianne Feinstein to finish this term over here. 1 more year she had to last, just about, right? And therefore, I mean, because if it was a year from now and it was still a couple months out from November, right? They would not appoint somebody really. If they appointed somebody, it doesn't make a difference. They would already be in campaign mode. And then it's up for grabs. Then anybody can win. And I really get a feeling like the insiders, the hardliners, the Democratic establishment, they want Adam Schiff. You know, I think they'll settle for Katie Porter, but they want Adam Schiff. They don't want Barbara Lee. Even though Barbara Lee has been doing, you know, what all the good Democrats do, supporting the war. I mean, right? She's supporting goose-stepping Nazis now in the Ukraine, and she was the only one who voted against the AUMF, as we were talking about. In this whole situation, Dianne Feinstein seat, that's why she should make a case right now for this seat. And I'll tell you this much. I'm not happy with Barbara Lee with her decisions in the Ukraine. I really wish she would change. But out of if I had to choose, gun to the head, Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, or Barbara Lee, I'm taking Barbara Lee right away. I really am. And she should make a case for this seat, talking about the way Dianne Feinstein, despite getting good intelligence from Scott Ritter, knowing that they didn't have any weapons of mass destruction, still went the other way, still buckled to the war machine, and she didn't. She voted against the AUMF. She was the only person to do so. Like I said, she's now supporting the Ukraine war, which sucks because we don't have one Democrat, but I would take her over the other three. You got anything else to say about that?
And then hopefully she regrows the backbone she had back then.
Yeah. Now, if she could find that backbone up, I don't think so. Just thinking about that. But now, right, I tell you right now, I got two friends in that race. One's running as a Republican, one's running as a Democrat. Raji Robb running as a Democrat, and James Bradley running as a Republican. I like both of them because they are both fighting for election integrity. They both have active cases going on right now. In fact, I got to check in with Raji. His case looked like it was going to the state Supreme Court as far as how you can access the machines. In other words, what they say is that they get all these like little, you know, the little cards you give me to put into the machine, right? The little drives. So they have these little drives that count all the votes, right? And after they take those drives and they put them into the machine. And what they say is that they have them in the machine, and this is weeks before Election Day. Now, the law is you can't start counting to election night. But what they say is that they put them into the machine, but they don't access the count until election night. But Raji's been arguing that, no, as soon as you put that on a hard drive, as soon as you get a tally, there's already a tally there. Somebody can go into the back end and look at it. So there's an argument in the courts there. James Bradley's kind of going through some things. I know he's a Republican, but, I mean, he's a populist guy, and he's got some points about him. So we'll pay close attention to what's going on. But I'm going to call both those guys today, and we'll get a report. And I'll tell you what, on Monday, I'll give you a report on what Raji Robb is saying and what James Bradley is saying there running for that seat. But we have to watch those top three people out there, Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, and Barbara Lee, and we'll see what's what. Close but no Kissinger. The Grim Reaper got Dianne Feinstein.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Tampa, Boca Raton, Orlando, Dallas, Houston, San Diego, Bloomington, Illinois, Indianapolis, and Levittown, New York. Wow, that's a lot of dates. See you there.